Lisa Five from Scrappy Mania, and today I want to try something new. I just got my new Prima stamps, and this is See Sally. So I want to go ahead and stamp Sally on clay. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to paint Sally and do some treatments on her and see how it comes out. I have this leftover cold porcelain, and if you want to know how to create this, I'll put the link of my cold porcelain tutorial in the description of this video. But what I want to do is I want to create this as a clay piece. So I'm going, and this clay is kind of getting, I have to use it. That's why I decided that I want to use it all up because I need to make some more. I had this clay for about more than like 6 months, I think. So it's time to kind of get rid of it and then make another batch. So what I want to do is I'm going to roll it out. The following clips were my mistakes when I first tried this technique. My first mistake was that I did not put any lubricant on my stamp before I stamped the clay, so it was very hard to take out without distorting the image. The second was that I used ink, black ink, and then I stamped the clay. That's another big mistake. I should not have done that. And the third mistake, well, actually, there's 4 mistakes that I made. The third mistake is when I rolled it out, I didn't really roll it out on wax paper. But this clay was very easy to remove from my my tile. But the last mistake that I made is in the first one I used a pasta machine. But then I decided for my second try I was going to stay away from the pasta machine because it just made it too thin. And I just rolled it out in the thickness of a nickel. So now here I am putting some baby oil, and you can also use petroleum jelly, but just a little bit. Don't saturate the stamp with the baby oil. Then notice that I have wax paper underneath. And then I have a little tool that I found in my husband's toolbox, and I think it has to do with welding. And I use that to cut the excess out. And notice how easy it was to peel that piece off the stamp because it did have that baby oil. And it doesn't affect the stamp at all. And then here I'm just smoothing the edges, making sure it's nice and smooth before I put it aside to dry. And now I'm going to put in wax paper and put it apart. Now here is, notice the stamp. It had a lot of clay. And I really had to take a brush and really brush it off. And then I had to take a baby wipe and really wipe it off. So do not use ink. Do not roll it on your stamp without putting some baby oil or petroleum jelly. It took me a while to kind of make sure I got all the clay off my stamp. So here's my second attempt. Even though, see the ink, the black ink that I used to stamp my my image, it's in the clay, but that's okay because we are going to color it afterwards. So notice that I did put my wax paper, and now I'm putting some baby oil on my stamp, and I almost forgot again, but luckily I remembered to put baby oil on my stamp. And then I just pressed it down and used this tool. I'm not sure what type of tool it is. I think it has to do with welding. I'm not sure, but I use that tool that has a nice edge, and that's what I use to kind of cut around it. And then I started cutting around the edges too, around the neckline, just removing any excess clay that I just don't want to be part of my image. And at the end, and you'll see at the end what you're going to do once it dries, it thoroughly dries, you want to go ahead and use a file, some kind of nail file or something to kind of smooth the edges. So here, and what I did is I just got a bunch of the little ones, the smaller stamps, and I also went ahead and placed those down and cut around them. And, you know, I was trying to use up all my clay, and I did. I got about 6 or 7 images with the clay that I have left over. Okay, so now our pieces are dry, so I'm going to show you the process with this piece. I already started some of the process because I was experimenting with my colors. I don't have acrylic paint. I'm using some watercolor paint, so and some gesso and glassy accent. I got a little bit left of this glossy accent, so I'm going to use that to give it some shine. But and also these dried a lot quicker. As you noted, these are not dry yet, so that's why I'm going to show you on the smaller piece, because these are not dry. You can see that it's not dry because you can still see some of the glue. It's supposed to become transparent. This one, and it is bending a little, but that's okay, because then what I'm planning to do is I'm going to mount that in cardstock, and it will give it some shape. And I got to make sure that it doesn't crack. So once I mount it on cardstock, it'll be fine. So as you can see there. And then this one is still, it's pretty wet. It's not completely dry, so that's why I'm not going to show you how to do that. But we're going to go ahead and finish this. So you're going to need some files, and these files are some that I found in a swap meet. I'm not sure what kind of files these are, but I got these files, and then I got a nail file. And what you want to do is you want to clean the edges, and I'm using this nail file to clean the edges. And you got to be careful with the piece because you don't want it breaking on you. And I guess I could have made the piece less, I should have made it thicker. But maybe if you make your piece, you may want to make it a little thicker than what I made mine. Mine is about the thickness of a nickel. Maybe you want to make it a little thicker than that. So I'm just cutting the edges here. Okay. And then just smoothing the edges. And you want to take your time on making sure that all the edges are nice and smooth before you paint it. Because after you paint, that's not the time to kind of get rid of the rough spots. You want to get rid of the rough spots before you paint the item. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. Now what you want to do is you want to get your paint. Now if you have acrylic paint, that might work better. But you still could do it with watercolor. Just make sure you make it very thick. Got a very thick amount. And you're just going to paint your whole piece, especially getting into those crevices. And then paint the sides as well. So I'm making sure that I really cover everything, and also that I go on the side and make sure that I put black ink on the side of my piece, and then I go over with a damp cloth and remove the excess of the black paint. Okay, so we're going to set this to dry. And we have, let me go ahead and take a little more off here. Okay, so now that we have that, let me go ahead and dry this. Let me go ahead and clean my surface. Now I want to take a little bit of gesso. And I buy the gesso, a big gallon of gesso, so I just put a little bit in this cup here, or this mason jar. Use my fingers. And it's going to be almost dry, and I'm just going to put it on top of my piece. I want to be careful that I don't get any gesso in the grooves, because I like that black outline that you see there. Okay. And one thing I want to show you, I went ahead and did paint the back of my piece with black. And now let's dry that. So that is nicely dry. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint the face. And I'm going to use some of my chalk ink that I have here, my soft pastels. Not chalk ink, I got soft pastels. And I also have this Distress Crackle, which maybe I'm not going to use. I'm going to use some of my chalk. I'm going to pick up a lot of color. So because I didn't have any acrylic, I'm using the soft pastels. And it's working pretty well. And I'm just putting a thick layer of the soft pastel. Was going to try my markers, but my markers were not going to work on this piece. So it's better to stay with some type of paint. Acrylic will be my first choice, but if you don't have acrylic, go ahead and try some soft pastel or even your watercolor. Just make sure that it's nice and thick. So here I'm using watercolor, and actually it's working pretty good. I'm just making sure that the watercolor it's very thick when I apply it. And then I'm putting some purple for the hat and for my boots. And now I'm trying to figure out a color for her hair, and I didn't want to use black and I didn't want to use brown. Well, actually I didn't have brown. So I just put kind of a grayish color. So now I'm putting some glossy accent, and I don't have a lot of glossy accent, so I had to use my paintbrush and dip it in and then apply it on the piece. But if you have a good size bottle of glossy accent, just drip it on your piece and let it dry. Okay. And there's my piece. So I'm going to let it dry, but this one is almost dry, and see how pretty that looks. It does bend a little bit, but if you want, you can place this on a cardstock and then glue it down. Or when you glue it down, you just put a little bit of hot glue and press it down, and I think it will be fine. So I hope you like this video. Another way of using your Prima dolls, or Prima stamps, use up your clay. And this is called porcelain, and then use some of your paints. So I hope you like this video, and thank you for watching. Bye now.